See, I love when I get to talk to other podcasters because they remind me of the things that I forget to do for myself. And it's like this
Yes.
beautiful thing. Humility at its finest, people. This is what it looks like. So, Shermain, you were saying.
Yes, yes. Let's see. It's so interesting every time I'm asked that question, like about my journey. So I grew up in poverty. So I have 7 siblings. We grew up in poverty. And as I think about growing up, I always wanted to belong. You see, I was hiding this huge secret. And if anyone visits my website, I speak about being Black, being gay, and being a Christian. And at the age of I was in the 3rd grade is when I realized I was gay, and we would go to church all the time. And so at that young age, I knew that it wasn't good to be gay and I'm going to say, go to church. And so this was a story that I created for myself. And I hid that for as long as I could. As I got older, I began to hear these stories about people that were being disowned, when they would come out to their parents, these were parents that were in the church. These are parents that would talk about love, right, and being of love and things like that. Yet they would disown their child, and they would say, in my opinion, just discard them like a piece of garbage, and saying you're not worthy enough to be here. We don't love you anymore because of who you are. And so for me, thinking about those things, I hid this secret for over 25 years that I was gay, afraid of being disowned, afraid of being pushed aside, afraid of being rejected. And, I wanted to belong. And so there was this moment when I was 25 where I had a conversation with my parents and it was a moment where I didn't want to have the conversation, but they found out I was gay. And so then we have this conversation. At the end of that conversation, they basically say, "We love you." And they stand up and give me a hug. And that moment I was like, wow, I was hiding all of this for all of this time. And I had all these fears and doubts and all this stuff. And it didn't end up the way that I thought it was going to end up. So I had all these fears for nothing. And so that was a really good, really big moment for me.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I can definitely relate to that. Because I'm actually bisexual. And I had my first spark with a girl when I was 13. And growing up in Olympia, Washington, that wasn't something that was an acceptable thing to get to be part of, and definitely hiding that part of myself. And I have strong attractions to men, and it can be a spectrum within that, but it was still knowing, I was oh, that's no, I know I'm not supposed to feel like that. And then just never bringing it up, and my dad bringing up when I was 15 finally 2 years later, and kind of what if this happened, Dad? And that is not aligned with his belief system, shall we say, to not go into the really heartbreaking moment that I still remember exactly where I was on the freeway with him when we had that conversation. But I didn't feel comfortable talking to anybody about it until my 20s. And it wasn't until I think I was 30 in my early 30s that I came out to my mom. And I was so upset trying to tell her that she thought I was about to tell her I was dying of cancer. That was that conversation. And she's like, "You're so silly. Of course it's fine."
Yeah.
And then when coming out to my dad just a few years, I'm almost 42 years old, and coming out to my dad, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago now. And him being "Oh, a lot more makes sense." And he's
Yeah.
"Of course I love you," but also saying that if I ever, I could never bring a woman home. She would never be welcome in his home. And it's just well, that's that kind of ends the possibility of dating. I feel for a lot of people, be "Oh, hey, yeah, you want to hang out?" Which, by the way, you're totally not going to be accepted by half of my family. I'm just saying. And so I have a lot of compassion in just coming out for the first time, on Facebook, I think it was like last year, about being bi, and just like the whole like fear of like how all that is. Cause I'm a very like touchy feely, like gregarious person. I never wanted to make any of my girlfriends, like my friends that were girls, to feel uncomfortable.
Hmm.
Right.
Hmm.
And so it was, yeah, I'm still kind of navigating that. So I really appreciate you bringing that forward for people to have that conversation, because I feel like it's becoming more common for people to have the conversation at younger ages, and it's getting a lot more publicity, which is great. But for people that are older, we're just like, yo, like it's not like it's still harder, but it was way
Yes.
harder.
Yeah. Yeah, I had all these fears around not being accepted and being
Yeah,
just pushed
yeah,
off the island, and you're it was like I had some sort of disease or some sort of like, get away from me, we're in the pandemic, but so I it was like this thought of just being alone, being rejected, and not belonging. And so that
yeah,
that connects to the work I do. It's really helping people. Part of it is helping people really stop hiding and helping them really stand up and be themselves, even though it's scary, even though it's going to require courage, helping them
yeah.
really stand up, because on the other side of that fear is freedom. And so I really love the work that I do. Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. It's such powerful and important work, because I think that there's so many people out there that are hiding who they are out of fear,
Yep.
not just like from a sexual orientation standpoint, but like just sex in general too, and there's just a lot of shame around that conversation, be it just like how much you want or how little you want, or what
Hmm.
kind you want to engage in, or what genders, like there's just so much that's out there,
Yeah.
which is why I'm really excited to start like going in to become a certified sex coach and consultant, because I just
Mm.
want to help take the shame away from all that and have that conversation, and people get to be their authentic selves and feel that sense of belonging, and find the people that are supportive and kind, and open to that conversation.
Yes, you're so right. And as I think about my work, um, people hide in so many areas. And so if we take the sexual piece out, like for me,
Yeah,
a lot of my clients are like, they want to use their voice, but they're
yeah,
afraid. They got this fear. They want to do these things and make this bigger impact, but they've got these fears that have been with them for a while that are holding them back. And so really, again, hiding, but on a different level, and helping them
yeah.
really bring that to light, to expose that fear, and take away its power, and to really help my clients really step into their power and be themselves is really fun for me. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. And like there's so many people, like I think that almost everybody probably has some level of limiting belief that's
Hmm.
rotating through their brain,
Hmm.
consciously or subconsciously.
Yeah.
So how do you bridge that initial conversation with them, in managing the shame that often comes with them?
Yeah. So my I guess part of my method is, the first thing I do is I ask them to be really vulnerable and courageous. And so we talk about things about them, like where are they hiding? How long have they been hiding? And really, there's this process I take them through to become vulnerable, and we become vulnerable with each other. So I create that safety. I create that place where they can really let their shields down. And so once the shields are down, I call them, then that allows them to really be authentic and really be themselves, and really talk about what they want and why they're hiding, and to get down to that level. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic. So what are some of the ways that you help people to feel safe? Like for anybody that's watching out there that's like, I mean, like I would like to create that space for people, but when I try, it's not necessarily effective. So what are
Yeah.
some suggestions you could give people out there?
Love it. To create safety, I always think about myself. One of the things I do as I'm speaking to people is I slow down, and I have a lot of pauses, and I ask questions that people are afraid to ask, to be completely honest. So I ask deep questions that really get to their soul and to the root of who they are. I ask questions about what they want to create, what's their purpose, who are they? Like, so digging into like, who are you really, and being able to really, it's questions like that, it's things like that, that help them really let those shields go. Um, and it's hard to explain. It's kind of just, it's one of my superpowers, is creating this safety, and this virtually or in person, where people simply feel held, and they simply feel seen, and heard and like they belong. And it's this it's hard to describe, but it's this kind of this love bubble that I create for my clients. Yes.
That's fantastic. It's a really beautiful thing, that building of affinity,
Mm-hmm.
so that people can feel seen and heard,
Mm-hmm.
and just creating that space where you're not judging people, creating
Yeah.
a space of neutral curiosity to hear them and to be able to release these thoughts of ego and expectations.
Yeah.
Because so many people are like, well, this person expects something from
Yep.
me. And it's just like, well, do they, or are you projecting?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And helping people to kind of like work through all of that noise. And
Yeah. Yeah.
how do you guide them through like this? So I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, this has been a conversation I've been having with friends and colleagues lately,
Mm-hmm.
is how is it that we help to facilitate people moving past societal constructs, familial indoctrination, our traumas, our triggers, to really distill down to who am I, what is my value system beyond all of those things, and
Mm-hmm.
how do I stand with strength and alignment with that?
Yes. So there are a number of ways that I do that. One of them, very simply, you spoke about values, is I take them through a values exercise where they actually look at all these words and determine which ones are most important to them. What your values are, these things that if you're not living them, they cause you stress. And if you are living them, they give you joy and they give you peace and they give you happiness and energy. So that's one of the first things I do, is take my clients through this sort of exercise so that they can really understand more about themselves, more about who they are. And then from there, we take it even deeper. What do you want to create? What are the thoughts that hold you back? What are those limited beliefs? Where did some of them maybe come from? And so it's this whole process of values, beliefs, purpose, and making sure that when I ask that creation question, what do you want to create? Making sure that it connects to the values. Because if what the person wants to create in their life, if it doesn't connect to the values, it's going to be hard, really hard for them to achieve. So
Yeah,
yeah,
no, that absolutely makes sense to me. And I'm so grateful that people are out there like you that are doing that for others,
yeah,
facilitating it and making the world a better place and lifting people up.
yeah. It's
Um,
fun.
yeah, I feel like there aren't very many gifts that are greater than helping someone feel seen and empowering them to be their authentic selves.
Yes. And for me, that was, as I said before, that's the thing that I wanted. So part of my work as a coach, I'm creating the stuff that I want. And so it's like, I want to belong. So I want to belong. So I create that belonging for my clients. I
Yeah,
want to stop hiding. So I create that space for my clients to stop hiding. I want to live my truth. So I create that for my clients. I want to be more courageous. So I create that for my clients. And I want to make a bigger impact. So I create that for my clients. And so
beautiful.
yes. So yeah, yeah. Yeah.
I hear people say all the time, it's like, turn your pain into your purpose.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you got to make pain worth something.
Yeah.
I feel like, because otherwise, like some situations in life, be it physical pain or emotional pain, if you just let it be there, it just eats at you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't need to. And the more you tell your story, the less shame controls you.
So true. So true. It's interesting that you say that. I'm going to introduce you to Freddie. I hadn't intended on talking about Freddie today, but this is
I love
Freddie. This is, yeah, he's my little bear. He's blue, which is my favorite color. He's got this great smile, and he sometimes encourages me to play small. He sometimes encourages me. He's like, well, who are you, to be doing this thing, so he kind of represents my fear. And sometimes he definitely whispers in my ear sometimes to sit down instead of standing up, to, who are you? He's like my inner critic, my critic. And yeah, but I know that deep down what Freddie wants is, he wants to protect me. He wants me
Mm,
to be safe. He doesn't want me to fall down and to feel pain, as you were speaking about. And so he challenges me to stay safe. And so I keep him here in my studio here, when I can reflect back and look at him and say, are you trying to keep me safe? And then I'll repurpose him. And I'll say, you know what? I want you to hype me up today. I want you to tell me that I can do this. I want you to tell me that I am enough. And so there's this, he has this kind of dual role where sometimes he'll, if I catch him trying to challenge me to play small, I'll change his role. I'll say, no, I need you to now, help me play big, help me speak up, help me use my voice. And so I keep him here with me all the time. So yeah.
That's awesome. So when you got him, was it something where you saw him and you were inspired to have that, or were you inspired and you went to find him?
That's a great question. So it was part of my, so I was in this coaching program called IPEC. And that was one of the assignments was they didn't tell us what he was for, but they said, go find something, an object that really kind of speaks to you, to who you are. They didn't tell us why until later on. It was like, oh, this thing is going to represent my fear. And then I created a name for him, Freddie. And yeah, and that's how he came to be. So
that's so interesting. So when you first introduced him to some of your executive clients, what are some of the responses that you get?
They're like, wait, what? Some of them are like, I paid all this money and this guy has this teddy bear. Like, what am I like? They start second guessing, like, what is this guy? Like, I've been duped. He's going to play with teddy bears the whole time. And so that's like their initial thing. And then as I speak about Freddie and, what he symbolizes, they make sense to them. They're like, okay, and then I will sometimes challenge them to go find their own Freddie, go find their own representation for fear. And so that they have that reminder of, is it trying to keep them small? Is their Freddie trying to keep them small, or are they shifting it and taking the power and having it be of service to them? So yeah.
That's great. I'm always curious how people respond to things that are super out of the box.
Yes.
Especially as grown-ups so oftentimes they lose their sense of wonder. They lose their sense of play. And being able to engage your inner wonder child as an adult is so incredibly important to have a healthy life.
Yes. And you're so right. And it's interesting because as you were saying that, I thought about like as adults, we're not encouraged to do any of that stuff, to play with teddy bears, to color, to do these things like that we did when we were kids. Like, wonder why that is, so
yeah, like let's build forts. I mean, the closest you get, I guess these days is like doing paintball, but even that I feel like you max out around like your mid-20s kind of like and then like dance clubs are usually for people who are usually like in their late like 20s, all of that, like early to late 20s. And then you start seeing 30-year-olds come into the club and you're like, what are you doing here, dude? I mean, I remember that as like a 21, 22-year-old woman, like looking at these guys. And definitely like if somebody was in their 40s coming to the club, you're just like, and so it's interesting. But now like we have adult coloring books.
Yep.
That's become a little bit more normalized.
Yep.
But I was joking with some of the women. I'm in this group of 1,400 women called Boss Babes of Seville, women from all different realms of life, and which I absolutely love. And I have proposed this project for the summer called From Glamorous to Gritty, Seville Boss Babes Getting It Done. And the purpose of it was to put on like really like long gowns and get our hair and makeup professionally done and get pictures taken, but then go and play in the mud and have our pictures taken again. And because like as like female entrepreneurs, like we do it all, right? And we had over 100 women that were just like, oh my God, yes. And what that made me think about is like, when we're young, like a lot of young girls, like they play with dolls, not everybody like that. I did both. I was both a tomboy and like love to get all dolled up, which is why this project just speaks to my heart. But I just thought that was so interesting that as like older women, like we don't get to dress up. We don't get to play and do those sorts of things and use our imagination. And some people might think that that's weird, but it's just like the only places where imagination and fashion get to come together is in the fashion house. And like we get to expand in that range. And in the fashion house, like men and women are allowed, which is great. But it's just like, what are the different ways that we can foster and model for all adults what play looks like?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so important. Play is so important and fun is so important. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just like, I want to climb trees and build forts. It's just like, why not?
Yeah.
My brothers and I used to play spies, and I'd put on like this white satin slip and climb trees when I was a little girl, and we'd have our walkie talkies, and mine was a cubic zirconia earring like box that looked like a crystal, and it was like open. I'd be like, it was amazing. So anybody listening, find ways, like
Yes.
not just with kids.
Yeah. And that's something I challenge my clients to bring in as well, because they'll create these goals, sometimes these really big goals. And my question will be, well, how can you bring some fun into that? How can you bring fun into it? How can you make it easy and simple? So fun is definitely important. It's important.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fantastic. Because like if you're not having fun and you're not working at a job that's in alignment with your value system, it becomes really draining really fast.
Yep. Yep.
And it is, yeah,
So
kind of,
true.
you got to
Yes,
balance all the things. You got to balance your masculine, feminine energy. You got to balance play with pragmatism. Like it all has to come together.
it does.
Um,
It does. Yes.
Speaking of which, I remember you and we spoke previously about imposter syndrome,
Hmm.
and you have a very interesting perspective when it comes to imposter syndrome compared
Yep.
to a lot of people that I've run across and myself personally. So I love bringing new perspectives to the table. So
Love it.
please share with us your perspective when it comes to imposter syndrome.
Yes. And so when I think of imposter syndrome, I think of being a fraud. Like, I feel like I'm a fraud. I feel like I don't belong in whatever this room is. I think the thoughts that come up is like, well, who am I? So I think
Yeah,
of
totally.
this imposter. And the way I look at imposter syndrome, actually, I'm going to tell a story. I Imposter syndrome for me is about putting yourself in those uncomfortable places. And I look back into my life and I saw this trend that I would always put myself into these uncomfortable places, knowing I learned at an early age that when I would do that, I would come out on the other side better. I would grow as a result, and I found that I grew at a faster rate when I would put myself in these places where I felt like an imposter. I remember the first time I did this, it was high school. So I was in junior high in 8th grade, and I had to figure out what high school I wanted to go to. You see, I could go to the high school that was near my house, but I liked computers. And back then, they had here in Phoenix, they had different schools that had they called it a magnet program. So they had a school you could go to that did computers, and some that did medicine, and some that specialized in just all these different areas. And I loved computers. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to go to the computer school. It's called Carl Hayden is the high school. And that school was like 15 miles away from my house. I wouldn't have any friends that were there. And I decided to do it anyway. So I went to this school, didn't know a soul, and went into these computer classes. And that school was it was not very diverse at all. And in these computer classes, I was the only Black person. I was only Black guy in these computer classes. Again, imposter syndrome. Who am I? What, can I really do this work? Right. Amongst all these white faces in this room. And I stuck with it. I kept doing it. And as I think about high school, I think about college, I think about graduate school, I think about all these places, even the coaching industry. I feel these like I'm an imposter every day. There's not many people that look like me in a lot of the places that I go. And my take on imposter syndrome is, for me, I strive to get more of that. I look at, if I'm not feeling like an imposter where I'm at, I'm not growing, is how I look at it. Most people try to get rid of imposter syndrome. What I try to do is get comfortable being an imposter, because I feel like that's where the real growth comes from. So yeah.
Yeah, it's such an interesting process. And like that's the one thing that I love about getting to promote so many different people that have different perspectives in life.
Yes.
Because none of us are going to be liked by everyone. None of us are going to make everybody happy with what it is that we think, what it is that we do, and how it is that we process and facilitate information. And so getting to like bring different people on, and somebody out there could be like, yeah, I love that. That totally resonates with me. Well, another person is like, yeah, like I really don't like that at all.
Yeah. Yep.
And none of it's wrong.
Yep.
None of it's wrong. It's so
Yep.
glorious. And so like for me with the imposter syndrome, it's just like that feeling of not good enough. I'm like, I don't know enough, any of those sorts of things. It's more about like accepting the level without shame or anything like that, and just be like, well, I'm not an imposter for me because I'm being transparent with people with where I am.
Yep.
And so in like whoever wants to be accepting and be with me at that level is fine.
Yes.
And then continuing to grow and continuing to strive and work through that, and recognizing for me and my internal tape, when I say I'm an imposter, that's an invalidation, and not being kind or accepting to myself for where I'm at, and rather seeing the people in front of me for where they're at. And they were at a different point in their journey too when they first started. And so hoping that those people would have compassion and see me and be reminded of where they were at when they started.
Yes.
With grace and kindness, and want to lift up and be part of that growth process, and not having to put a mask on throughout the process of growth, which I feel like so many people, when they're feeling that imposter syndrome, that's what it is that they do. They put on a mask to be like, it's like that whole concept, like fake it till you make it. I feel like that's born out of the imposter syndrome, instead of being like, yeah, I don't feel like I'm quite where I want to be with this group of people and this, like modality or whatever, but I'm at the beginning.
I love that you say that. As I think about more about imposter syndrome, for me, it's this part of it is this thought that these other people are better than I am, is part of that thought for me. And as I think about that more, I think they don't even care. They don't care about you. Like, they don't care where you're at. They're not sitting here thinking about you and like, I'm better than this person. They're not thinking that at all. They're thinking about other stuff, about themselves. And so that's also another way that I shift into a better place, is like, they're not worried about what I'm doing. They may have their own version of imposter syndrome, and so yes.
Yeah, it's like no matter what level people oftentimes get to that I talk to around the world, they still have those thoughts periodically of the imposter syndrome. And many people look at them and they idolize them. And then they talk to them like they're an actual person, and they're just like, holy heck, like that person has insecurities too, just like I have insecurities.
They're human like me. Yeah.
They're human. Like being human is often messy.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate your candor and your just your wisdom and all the things that you're contributing to the world today.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Really beautiful and so important.
Yes.
So many places to go. What are some of, is there anything, well, there is something else that I want to talk about, of course, is if you feel comfortable talking about any experiences that you've had with racism along that journey between being in high school and that See White Faces like you talked about, and the coaching industry as well, in a place where people are very focused on like having a growth mindset.
Yes. I think my earliest experience of racism was my twin brother and I were walking home from school. We grew up in the white middle class. We were the poor Black family in the white middle class neighborhood. So my twin and I were walking home from school. We were probably in the first grade or something, second grade, walking home from school. We see we're walking on the right side of the street. It's a small street, and there's a lady coming towards us, and she's got a baby, and I didn't think much about it, but continued to walk. And as I look up, I look to the side, on the other side of the street, and she is over there now on the other side of the street. And we continue to walk, and I look back, and she's back on our side of the street. And so I was thinking, in the first grade or second grade, like, why did she do that? you know? And so I don't know if it was because of the color of our skins, but that was the earliest instance where I thought maybe that was why. Um, most of there was another instance in high school where I was at a friend's house, or I was walking to a friend's house, and just someone just yelled out the N-word. Hey, you N-word, get out of this neighborhood, kind of thing. But I couldn't tell where it was coming from. And my friend, defended me and yelled back at the person. I didn't know where it was from, but it was, so those are two vivid instances for me. As I think about like my professional career, there's nothing that comes to mind where I think about where, there's a particular instance where someone said something or did something, and I knew it was because it was a racist kind of act. I think most of that stuff happens, at least for me, happened, behind the scenes. It didn't happen in front of me. So maybe, I'm sure, maybe there were jobs I didn't get or promotions I didn't get because of that, but it was never it was not something that I knew about. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing those things here. I do appreciate it.
Oh, I've got one more. Ooh, this one's really good.
You just need to put those two things in like the same sentence. You're like, yes. Oh, yeah.
And this happened at church.
Oh, wow.
I was, let's see, how old was I? I was probably in the 6th grade or something, in 6th grade. And we went to a mostly white church. And there was a girl there that I wanted to sit next to in service. And so I asked her, I was like, hey, can I sit next to you in the service? And she said, no, you can't sit next to me because my grandpa sits with us and he doesn't like people that look like you. Oof. And I was, I was taken back. I was like, okay, and so, and this happened at the church. And so a place of love. And so, yes, so there's another example for you. Yeah.
I'm so sorry that those things happened. It's so mind-boggling to me, but that's just because of like who I am and how I engage with the world. And I'm just like, why would anybody think, it's just so like beyond my scope of reality why anybody would treat somebody else like that. It's just it's not great. Yes. But I'm happy to hear that in the coaching world, in your professional life, that has not been something that you've been experiencing. So.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes. Yes.
And you have another story to share that's awesome for everybody to hear, which is your story. Like, you live a debt-free life.
I do. Yes. So I am a debt-free millionaire. Came from poverty. Again, 7 siblings, 2 parents. I remember there was a part of my life where we had a 3-bedroom home, and I would go into my room and there were 2 mattresses on the floor. And that's where me and my 4 brothers would sleep, on the floor on these 2 mattresses. And I also remember times where we didn't have gas. And so my mom would have to heat the water up on the stove, and for us to take showers, and she would pour the water onto us as we showered. And so, yeah, so we were poor. We were poor. I decided at a young age, I didn't want to grow up being poor. I didn't want to be poor. And so I always had this mindset of growth. I decided, I'm just trying to think, like, how do I want to frame this story? There were a number of decisions I made. Number one, to go back and get my education. So to get my bachelor's degree. There was a time when I was working as a leader in a call center. I wanted to upskill myself. I wanted to do work that was more challenging intellectually and that paid more. And so I taught myself network engineering. So I'd get to work and I would sit in the cafeteria. Sometimes the lights were still off. I would sit in the cafeteria for 2 hours before my shift every day. And I'd sit there and study. I have my books and my note cards and all that kinds of stuff, and study for 2 hours every single day. to earn these certifications. And as I got certified, I had an opportunity to work at another place. And so I ended up working 2 full-time jobs for 3 years. So 80 hours a week, 3 years, and to become debt-free. It paid off my house, my car, everything.
That's awesome.
And yeah, it was the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life, but the most rewarding thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I really love stories like that where people work really hard to be able to accomplish their dreams
Yes.
and to be able to be a positive role model for other people out there.
Yes, it was yeah, it was quite the journey. People were like, well, how did you do that? And I would say, I would take PTO. I take time off when I got tired. If I needed a day here or a day there, I would do it. But really it was all I was doing was working. And although it was a sacrifice, I'm happy that I did it. So yeah.
Yeah. You're like, grit. How did you do it? Grit.
That's exactly it. I had it all worked out. The great thing too is job 1 and job 2 were about 5 minutes away from each other. So I would in job 1, then I'd go to like Starbucks and grab some food and take it to job 2. And then I'd eat at my desk, and then start my shift. And yeah, it was great also because I had leaders who believed in what I wanted. They were really rooting for me, and I was able to be flexible with my schedule so that I could make it happen. So it's great to have people who believe, leaders who believe and want you to win and will do what they can to help you win.
Yeah, so, that is a very important message.
Yes.
And also like so great too that you work with executives so you can have that conversation of leadership as a coach and consultant and all of that, and because you get to walk your talk.
Yes. It is so great. I was thinking about what you were saying, the question you asked a little bit about my journey, but as far as me getting into the coaching space, I remember I was working as an engineer, and my leader knew that I was my career path I wanted was more on the leadership side. I didn't want to really be the technical like whiz. I wanted to be a leader of folks. And so we went to this, I went to this training course, and that's where I was exposed to a coach. And I was, she was amazing. And in that experience, it made me realize that all the leadership roles I had the previous 15 years, the thing I loved about all those roles was the coaching aspect, the developing, the helping someone get from A to B. All that was so energizing to me. And I thought, oh my gosh, like I can do this for a living. Like I can for a living, I can coach people. And so that's what really, from that point on, I was really focused on coaching. And so I went to the same coaching school she went to. And really from then I was really immersed on increasing my coaching skill set. And it was fun. Yeah. Yeah, it's been fun. Yeah.
What was her name in case anybody else wants to find her?
Christine Mann with Mann Consulting. She's amazing. Yes.
With 1 or 2 N's?
2 N's. 2 N's. Yes.
Fantastic. Well, Shermain, thank you so much for all of your wisdom that you shared. Do you, where can people find you?
Yes. So I am right now at shermainmelton.com. You can reach out to me. I have a podcast called Courage to Impact. YouTube and all the other channels, Courage to Impact as well. So there we go.
Fantastic. Yes. So one last question before we go. It's the same question I ask everybody is who inspires you in the world today?
Who inspires me in the world today?
It can be multiple people if you want.
Yes. I'm gonna say something that's really edgy and
Ooh.
really edgy for me, especially based on some things that we know about this person today. And that is Bill Cosby. And the reason for that is me growing up, like when I think about the Cosby Show, like that was my first like experience of like, wow, like if I want, I can be a doctor or a lawyer. It portrayed this family that was, I'd never met a Black doctor. I never met a Black lawyer before. But on this show, he created this show that allowed me to really know that I could be that if I wanted to. And it was this place of love. It was this place of fun. And it was this family that that I could have if I chose. And so, yeah, so Bill Cosby, I love what he created in the Cosby Show. So I admired him for that work and for that piece of art that he's created in the world. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for being brave, for courageously sharing that. And as a backing in a way for that, for anybody that struggles with that conversation, I would like to remind people that Michael Jackson has a terrible reputation in certain areas of life, yet his music was phenomenal and his skill as a dancer was phenomenal. And to this day, you still see young people like working through the different dance moves that Michael Jackson did. So he is still idolized for the talent he had that people are capable of separating from the acts that he did that were unethical.
Yep. Spot on. Yes.
So in that, I would like to say, again, thank you so much for being on the show.
You're welcome.
And for anybody out there who's interested in being on the show, who has wisdom to share and wants to courageously share their own story and obstacles they've overcome, or if they're interested in connecting with me for empowerment and confidence coaching with or without horses, or men's mindset coaching, please do connect with me at www.globalequineaffiliates.com or on Instagram at Elysia Buss. So thanks everybody again for watching, and until next time, we'll see you later.
Thanks, Elysia.
You're so welcome.